welcome back to my channel. It is your girl, Dutchy. Today's video is going to be all about compulsory heterosexuality, and for the purposes of today's video and my pronunciation, I'm going to be referring to it as comp het a lot of the time, just because it is a mouthful. You guys have been asking for a video on comp het for the longest time, so here we go. I'm going to be talking about the origin and history of comp het, what it's all about, what we can do to change it. I just want to disclaim this by saying that comp het is a super complex system of oppression, and there are so many levels and differing aspects of comp het that I simply cannot explain in one video. So if you guys do really enjoy this one and would like to learn more about it, then I can always do a part 2. But for the purposes of today's video, I'm going to be focusing on gender identity and sexual orientation and how comp het affects a society and every single individual in some way. And I'm going to touch on the history of it as well. So I'll explain it as much as I can. But yeah, obviously I'm not going to be able to talk about every single part. And just before we get started, if you are new here, hi, I'm Dutchy. I create loads of LGBTQ+ based educational content, and I would absolutely love for you to join the family too. So if you would like to, hit that big red subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss an upload. And without further ado, let's talk comp het. Alrighty then, compulsory heterosexuality, also known as comp het. The term compulsory heterosexuality was actually coined by Adrienne Rich in an essay she wrote in 1980. The essay was called Compulsory Heterosexuality and Lesbian Existence. She defined comp het as the idea that heterosexuality is assumed, and that it is the default sexuality enforced by a patriarchal and heteronormative society. Comp het is also completely responsible for not only the existence, but also the forced participation of the coming out process. So here's the thing, compulsory heterosexuality is a system of oppression, and we can find comp het everywhere. You will honestly start noticing comp het everywhere after watching this video. It exists in an array of different institutions, including medical, educational, sport, political, legal, religion, and in our social lives too. And then all of this, of course, extends to gender, gender roles, and gender expression, as well as sexuality. Wherever comp het exists, you'll find positivity and rewards for heterosexuality, and punishment for anything that deviates from man equals masculine and female equals feminine. I'd also like to mention that while comp het is extremely noticeable to the trained eye, it also manifests itself internally in different ways. For example, internalized homophobia is in fact a product of comp het. And this makes a whole lot of sense when you break it down. When an individual is denied any alternative to heterosexuality or heteronormative behaviors, you may actually believe that you're straight, even when you're not. Comp het is actually so strong and ingrained into our society that it can actually prevent an individual from even truly considering anything out of the norm or considering any other sexuality. It can also lead to making you feel shame or guilt if you do happen to stray from this norm or experiment, or start having different thoughts, feelings, and emotions from that of a heterosexual individual. When I was reading Rich's essay, I was doing a lot of self-reflection and realizing so much, because I've had and experienced a lot of internalized biphobia, and it just makes sense as to why comp het is responsible for any of those feelings of guilt or shame for anyone that strays from the heterosexual norm. Something that I also found super interesting after reading Rich's essay is the fact that, and I'll dive deeper into this a little bit later, but the fact that pretty much every member of the LGBTQ+ community would have challenged the idea of comp het at some point or consistently. I think the whole coming out process is challenging this norm, this system of oppression. That is what the whole coming out process is. And comp het is the idea that you are straight. Everyone is assumed straight because it's the default sexuality. I just find it so interesting that some individuals genuinely grow up, are attracted to who they're attracted to, or the norm, e.g. when guys grow up attracted to girls and girls grow up attracted to guys, and they fit into this cookie cutter society, like they don't think there's anything different to them, and they just think that they're straight, so they never question it. Even if they find someone of the same gender attractive, they don't question that as to whether they could actually fall in love with them or be with someone of the same gender, because they're like, no, but I like guys, so like why would I ever question that? And that is the whole idea of comp het. But it's just the fact that it sort of like got to me that so many people could actually be sitting there not even questioning, because they think, no, okay, well, I've always liked the opposite gender, so that's enough for me. When I find a girl hot, I just find her attractive, right? I'm not gay, right? I don't know. We'll dive deeper into that a little bit later. So, who does comp het actually affect? Well, it affects everyone in different ways. In her essay, Rich also mentions that heterosexuality, especially in women, is not natural. She argues that heterosexuality is a violent political institution imposed on society and its people. I actually mentioned this briefly before, but comp het actually removes any form of choice and or self-expression, leaving women to fill subordinate roles to men. She also mentioned that this has been researched in relation to women because comp het is so heavily linked to misogyny. Just before I go any further, this video is in no way, shape or form hating on men at all. I'm also going to be talking about how comp het negatively impacts men as well, in terms of producing toxic masculinity, homophobia, all of that as well. It is just incredibly linked to misogyny, and that has a lot to do with the history of comp het, which I am just about to cover. So, where does comp het stem from? As mentioned previously, there are so many different aspects that form the idea of comp het, including the extensive history of good old misogyny. The first aspect I would like to talk about is from an economic standpoint. So basically, throughout history, women were always economically dependent on men. Now this, of course, is because traditionally, women were excluded from education that could lead to professions, which ultimately funneled women into unpaid labor and being a housewife. Now that was, and in some countries still is, the only option. Which leads perfectly into my next point. Women didn't have a choice. If women wanted to start a family or have a house or just survive, have food to eat, you would need to be with a man. You would need to grow up and find a man to settle down with, or you couldn't get an education and you couldn't find a profession or excel in a profession because no one would take you because you're a female. It was men that did all the work and were the breadwinners, and the females that stayed at home, cooked, cleaned, and had children and looked after those children. Furthermore, it would have been extremely hard, almost impossible, to set up a life and a household without a man, on a purely economic basis, I'm talking. Like, it just wasn't possible. So as you can probably see, comp het has been embedded into society historically, and it's carried through to present day. So that economic side of things was probably the most clear-cut example of comp het, but now I'm going to move on to a cultural aspect. Both historically and in present day, comp het is communicated to us through a variety of different ways. So historically, comp het was everywhere in terms of plays, novels, stories, wife tales, songs, and poems. Everything was man and a woman, Jack and Jill, Adam and Eve, Romeo and Juliet. And even to this day, the vast majority, or at least the most popular representations of sex and relationships, marriage, or just partnership, companionship, have been centered around heterosexual couples. Now, this form of comp het may seem a little bit more subtle compared to the economic aspect of things. However, all of these movies, TV shows, everything that you're seeing in the media is still trying to enforce people to believe that heterosexuality is the norm or the default. It's all you see. Popular couples, popular rom-coms, popular TV shows, books, it's probably all focused around a heterosexual couple or more than one. These movies usually portray a woman falling in love with a man and almost highlights it as the pinnacle of their existence. Like a woman just waits for their Prince Charming to come along, and once that Prince Charming does come along, she feels complete and whole and happy within herself because she's found this man. Which again, further tries to emphasize the fact that if you're a woman, all you do is have to wait for a man, and once you find that man, you'll be happy and whole. Comphet is also heavily portrayed through porn. Porn is a big one. And although nowadays you can reach out and find different types of porn, not just heterosexual porn, there's lesbian porn out there, gay porn out there, which can be a problem in itself, because I'm not saying that all men do this, but I feel like there would be men out there or individuals out there that would watch lesbian porn, but would they actually support a lesbian couple in real life or a gay couple in real life? I don't know. I'm not saying all of those people that would watch that porn are homophobic, but I'm also not saying that some of them wouldn't be, because there would definitely be men out there that would get off to two chicks having sex that would also then see two men walking down the street holding hands and disapprove of it. That's all I'm saying. When Rich was writing her essay, porn would have been almost exclusively heterosexual. There would be no gay or lesbian anything. Back then, porn focused on the man enjoying himself and the woman doing everything they could to please him. This is something that women had to put up with and perhaps even perform the enjoyment of when they weren't really enjoying themselves at all, but didn't necessarily question why. Because of comphet. This form of comphet, for example, could lead to a woman feeling like heterosexual sex just isn't that great, or just isn't that fun for them, because they've been taught that it's more about the man getting off and the man finishing, and thinking that's entirely normal, which of course it isn't. Sex is meant to be pleasurable for both parties. It's not just about the guy at all, but comphet would have been responsible for women feeling that way, and still to this day. The next point I would like to cover is the fetishization of lesbianism and lesbians, both in the media and porn. I'm sure most of you watching this are part of the LGBTQ+ community, so you would understand that lesbians are sexualized far too often, and the term lesbian is often even broken down into it being a sexual act, or like girl on girl being such an attractive and sexy thing to watch, or a turn on. Sometimes the term lesbian can even be seen as a dirty word or a dirty label. In some people's minds, I know plenty of lesbians that I'm friends with, or plenty of lesbians on the internet, who actually prefer using the term queer or gay, and I get that. Because if I was a lesbian, I think I would refer to myself as gay, and that's probably comphet at play, and also a result of years and years of men making an enjoyment out of lesbian porn, rather than leaving it as just a valid sexuality and leaving it for what it is, which is exactly that. In Adrienne Rich's essay, she also speaks about that and dives into that a lot more heavily, which I can do in another video if you would like me to. I can definitely dive deep into that, but it does make a lot of sense, and I think it is why a lot of lesbians do not like using the term or labeling themselves as a lesbian, and I feel like comphet has a lot to do with that, whether they know it or not. So now I want to briefly speak about how this can affect men as well as women, just like everyone as a whole, in a negative way, because comphet leaves so much room for not only homophobia, but toxic masculinity. I mentioned earlier in this video, if you deviate from anything that is men equals masc and female equals femme, it's punished. You're looked down upon. You are, oh, come on, toughen up, be a man. Men don't cry, all those sorts of things. Be a man. And which of course also leads into men sexualizing women, sexualizing sexualities other than heterosexual, but even in the heterosexual world of men, seeing women as people that are there to fulfill their needs sexually and emotionally and everything, and this has been ingrained into society for the longest time. As you can see, historically it was that way, and comphet has everything to do with that. But as you can see, comphet also plays a massive role in the coming out of a male as well, because they are taught for the longest time that they're the breadwinners, they're meant to go and earn that coin, meant meet a female, wife her up, have a family and live happily ever after. And like, it goes the same way. Lesbianism and LGBTQ+, everything, like the LGBTQ+ community didn't just form in the 21st century. There were lesbians that existed. There were gay men that existed. There were transgender folk that existed. All of that didn't just arise in the 21st century. It has been around forever. It's just the fact that it wasn't accepted. It wasn't even questioned. You weren't allowed to question it. It wasn't a thing. It's only the fact that society is slowly becoming more accepting of the LGBTQ+ community, different different sexualities, different gender identities, etc., etc., that we are seeing more about it. More and more people are feeling more comfortable to come out and be themselves. While there are so many people out and proud, there are heaps of people in the closet still scared to come out. There are still people that will never come out or hide their identity when they know their true identity. Or there's also people out there that don't even question it due to comp het and may never even know because they won't question it, won't stray from the norm, won't experiment because that is how they've been brought up or that is what they've been told is the default. At the end of the day, there isn't too much we can do to help extinguish comp het. Other than what we can do as a voice to our family members and friends, people we surround ourselves with. The most important thing is LGBTQ+ visibility. That is the biggest thing that can help extinguish it, minimize it to the best of our ability. As LGBTQ+ visibility and acceptance increases, we as a society can start to challenge comp het and start to attack it pretty much. Oh my people, that was a long one. I feel like I blabbed a lot, so if there's just a whole lot of ramble in there, I apologize. It's something that I'm super passionate about, and like I've always known what it was, but I've never really ever read Adrian's essay. I will link it. I'll link the wiki page and everything about it in the description box if you'd like to have a read of it yourself. It is super duper interesting, makes a whole lot of sense. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'm sorry it took so long to film this video. I just wanted to make sure I was fully educated on the topic and her essay before I filmed a dedicated video on it. Yeah, if you want me to do a part 2 or part 3, 4, 5, whatever on compulsory heterosexuality, different aspects of it, please let me know in the comments below, or ask me any questions in the comments and I'll try my best to answer them or put you in the right direction of where to find those answers. And yeah, I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions on comp het as well, so let's have a massive chat about it in the comments. I'll be replying to every single one of you. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy and found it informative, please make sure to give this video a huge thumbs up, and I will see you guys in my next one. Bye!